Here is what they never told you. The world is not a fair place. It was never designed to be. It is a hierarchy, brutal, ancient, and completely indifferent to your feelings. At every level of that hierarchy, there are people waiting to consume what you have, your energy, your loyalty, your trust, your position, not always out of malice, simply because that is the nature of the game. Machiavelli watched kingdoms fall, watched honest men destroyed by calculated ones, watched goodness get mistaken for weakness. And then he wrote it all down, cold and precise. Power does not reward the pure, it rewards the prepared. So the only question that matters now is this: are you finally ready to stop being the lesson and start becoming the teacher? Drop one word in the comments, the word that describes the man you're becoming. Number 2, the anatomy of weakness. Most men will never understand why their life feels like it's slipping through their fingers. They'll work harder, pray longer, wait patiently for the world to finally recognize their worth, and they will wait forever. Not because they lack talent, not because they lack intelligence, but because they are operating on a fundamental misunderstanding of how power actually moves in this world. They believe that goodness is a shield, that loyalty automatically earns loyalty in return, that if you simply do the right thing long enough, the universe will balance the scales in your favor. And that belief, that beautiful, comfortable, devastating belief, is the very thing that keeps them pinned to the bottom. Weakness is not always loud. It doesn't always look like cowardice or laziness. Sometimes weakness wears the face of patience when action is required. Sometimes it looks like forgiveness extended to people who are already sharpening the knife behind their back. Sometimes it looks like a man who is so desperate to be liked that he abandons the one thing he should protect above everything else: his position. Machiavelli called it clearly. A ruler who is loved but not feared holds his power by permission. And anything held by permission can be taken the moment that permission is revoked. The world does not take from the strong. It takes from the available. It takes from the man who has made himself easy to access, easy to read, easy to manipulate, and easy to discard. Here is the cold anatomy of weakness. It is not a character flaw, it is a strategic flaw. It is the failure to understand that every relationship, every environment, every social dynamic has an invisible power structure running beneath the surface. And if you are not consciously positioning yourself within that structure, then someone else is positioning you, and they are not placing you anywhere that benefits you. The weak man reacts, the powerful man architects. One is moved by the world, the other moves the world around him like pieces on a board he alone can see. Comment below. What was the moment you realized the world plays by different rules? Tell me. Number 3, the Machiavellian awakening. There comes a moment in every man's life that doesn't announce itself with fanfare or clarity. It arrives quietly, disguised as pain. It comes wrapped in betrayal, in humiliation, in the slow and suffocating realization that someone you trusted completely was never in your corner to begin with. Maybe it was a friend who smiled at your face and poisoned your reputation behind your back. Maybe it was a partner who mistook your gentleness for weakness and used it accordingly. Maybe it was a workplace, a family dynamic, a social circle where you gave everything you had and watched people take it without hesitation, without gratitude, without even the basic courtesy of acknowledgement. That moment, that specific devastating moment, is not a wound. It is an education, and the men who survive it don't just recover, they transform. This is what Machiavelli understood that most philosophers refused to accept. He didn't write for the idealists. He didn't write for the men who believed the world could be reasoned into fairness. He wrote for the men who had seen the world clearly, without the comfort of illusion, without the sedative of false hope, and chose to engage with reality on reality's terms. The Machiavellian awakening is not about becoming cruel. It is not about abandoning your values or becoming the villain of your own story. It is about something far more precise and far more powerful. It is the moment you stop being surprised by human nature and start using your understanding of it as the sharpest weapon in your arsenal. Because once you truly understand how people operate, what they fear, what they desire, what they will sacrifice their integrity for without a second thought, you can never be blindsided again. You begin to see manipulation before it reaches you. You begin to read rooms, agendas, and motivations the way other men read words on a page. You stop being a participant in other people's games and start designing your own. The awakening doesn't make you cold, it makes you unbreakable. Comment the phrase, "I see clearly now," if this is hitting different. Let me know you're awake. Number 4, the art of controlled silence. There is a weapon so devastatingly effective, so chronically underestimated, that most men walk past it every single day without ever picking it up. It requires no money, no physical strength, no special intelligence, no connections, and no formal education. It has toppled empires, shifted negotiations, broken the composure of the most confident men in any room, and built an aura of power so thick that people begin to project greatness onto you before you have spoken a single word. That weapon is silence. Not the silence of a man who has nothing to say. Not the awkward, apologetic silence of someone shrinking under pressure. The deliberate, architectural, ice-cold silence of a man who understands that every word he withholds is a brick added to the fortress of his mystique. Machiavelli understood that information is currency, and the man who speaks most freely is the man who is constantly spending without ever saving. When you over-explain yourself, you are handing people the manual to your mind. When you justify your decisions to people who have no authority over your life, you are subconsciously confessing that their approval is something you require. When you fill every silence with nervous conversation, you are broadcasting the one thing a powerful man must never broadcast: insecurity. The world reads your words, but it feels your silences. And what it feels in a man who is comfortable with silence is something ancient and instinctive. It feels danger. It feels depth. It feels like a man who knows things he is choosing not to say, and that calculated restraint is more intimidating than any aggressive display of dominance could ever be. Understand this principle at its deepest level. Silence is not passive. Silence is the most active form of control available to you in any social or professional dynamic. It forces the other person to fill the void, and in filling that void, they reveal themselves completely: their anxieties, their assumptions, their desperation, their agenda. The man who speaks less in a negotiation wins more. The man who responds slower in a conflict controls the emotional temperature of that conflict. The man who does not chase with words what he cannot yet secure with position preserves his leverage entirely. Every unnecessary explanation you give weakens your frame. Every overshared emotion hands someone a blueprint for how to destabilize you. Every time you rush to defend yourself against someone who has already decided what they think, you lose ground you will spend months trying to recover. Practice the silence of a man who has already won. Speak when it builds. Withhold when it dominates. Because in a world full of men talking loudly to mask how lost they truly are, the man who says nothing and means everything becomes the most powerful presence in any room he walks into. Comment, "Silent lion," right now if you understand the power of saying nothing. Prove you're built different. Number 5, never let them see the machine. There is a reason the most powerful men in history were described as unreadable. Not cold, not robotic, not emotionally dead, but unreadable. There is a profound and strategic difference between a man who has no inner world and a man who has an extraordinarily rich inner world that he has simply chosen to make inaccessible to others. One is emptiness, the other is armor. And the man who masters this distinction becomes something the world genuinely does not know how to handle, a force it cannot predict, cannot manipulate, and cannot destabilize because it has never been given the information required to do any of those things effectively. Most men are an open book, not because they are naive, but because they have been conditioned to believe that vulnerability is connection, that transparency builds trust, that showing people your full emotional landscape is somehow a sign of strength and authenticity. And in certain sacred relationships, in carefully chosen moments, with people who have genuinely earned that access, there is truth in that. But that is the exception, not the operating principle. Because the brutal reality of navigating a world built on competition, hierarchy, and self-interest is this: the more people know about what moves you, what breaks you, what you fear, what you desperately want, the more precisely they can engineer your manipulation. Your emotions, worn publicly, are not a sign of depth. They are a targeting system for everyone around you who does not wish you well. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must be both the lion and the fox. The lion to frighten the wolves and the fox to recognize the traps. But there is a third dimension to this that most people miss entirely. The prince must also be the mask, the carefully constructed, strategically presented exterior that allows him to operate in the world without ever fully exposing the machinery of his mind. This is not deception for the sake of cruelty. This is the disciplined art of strategic presentation. You decide what people see. You decide what narrative they construct about you. You decide which version of yourself enters the room, and you keep the full, unfiltered, complete version of yourself protected behind walls that only lower on your terms, in your timing, for your purposes. Because here is what the unguarded man never realizes until it is far too late. People do not just use what you tell them against you in moments of open conflict. They file it away. They catalog your insecurities, your triggers, your patterns, your pressure points, and they store that information patiently, sometimes for years, waiting for the precise moment when using it will benefit them most. The man who overshares today is handing someone a weapon they will not fire until the moment it causes maximum damage. And by then, the conversation where you gave it to them will feel like a lifetime ago. Control your narrative before the world writes one for you. Show people your direction, never your doubts. Show them your composure, never your chaos. Show them your decisions, never your deliberations. Let them see the result of the machine, the output, the finished product, the calm, decisive, unmovable man who seems to operate on a frequency they cannot access. Never let them see the gears turning. Never let them see the cost. Never let them see the machine. Comment the machine right now if you're done being readable, if you're done being predictable, if you're ready to become the man nobody can figure out. Drop it below. Number 6. The architecture of fear and respect. Machiavelli asked one of the most dangerous questions ever committed to paper. Is it better to be loved or to be feared? And the world has spent 5 centuries misquoting his answer, misunderstanding his intent, and missing the profound strategic intelligence embedded in that single question entirely. Because Machiavelli's answer was never simply be feared. That is the reading of a man who skimmed the surface. The complete answer, the answer that changes how you move through every room, every relationship, every power dynamic for the rest of your life, was this: it is best to be both. But since the two rarely coexist perfectly, the man who must choose should choose fear. Not because love is worthless, but because love, without the backing of consequence, is a promise the world will break the moment keeping it becomes inconvenient. Think about every person who has ever taken advantage of your kindness. Think about every time you extended grace to someone and watched them interpret that grace as an invitation to push further. Think about every professional environment where your agreeableness was mistaken for availability, where your patience was weaponized against your own interests, where being the person everyone liked somehow translated into being the person everyone overlooked when power and opportunity were being distributed. That is what happens when you are loved without being feared. You become comfortable to be around, and comfortable is another word for controllable. The man who is only loved is the man everyone smiles at, relies on, drains quietly, and never truly respects. Because respect, genuine and lasting respect, is not born from warmth. It is born from the understanding that there are consequences to crossing you. But here is where most men misread this entirely and destroy themselves in the process. Fear does not mean aggression. It does not mean volatility, threats, intimidation, or the kind of loud dominance that insecure men perform for an audience that sees through it immediately. That is not fear. that is desperation wearing a costume. Real fear, the kind that commands rooms without raising a voice, the kind that makes people think carefully before they speak to you carelessly, the kind that earns you a reputation that walks into spaces before your body does. That fear is built through consistency. It is built by being a man who says exactly what he means and means exactly what he says without exception, without negotiation, and without the emotional flexibility that people learn to exploit. It is built by having standards so visible and so consistently enforced that violating them feels genuinely dangerous to anyone considering it. It is built by the quiet, undeniable track record of a man who has never made an idle threat, never issued a warning he didn't follow through on, and never allowed a boundary to be crossed without a response that made crossing it again unthinkable. The architecture of fear and respect is constructed brick by brick through your behavior over time. Not your words, not your image, not the persona you project on any given day, your behavior. Sustained and unwavering in the moments when compromising it would have been easier. Every time you held your standard when the world pressured you to lower it, you laid a brick. Every time you walked away from something that didn't serve your position rather than clinging to it out of fear of loss, you laid a brick. Every time you responded to disrespect not with anger or pleading, but with the cold, quiet withdrawal of your presence and your investment, you laid a brick. And over time, those bricks build something that no amount of charm, talent, or likability can construct. They build a reputation. And reputation, in the Machiavellian framework, is the most durable form of power available to any man operating in a world built on perception. Understand something that most men discover only after years of painful experience. The world treats you according to the standard you have demonstrated you will accept. Nothing more. Nothing less. Raise that standard. Enforce it without apology, without lengthy explanation, and without the need for anyone's understanding or validation. Because the man who is both respected and quietly feared does not need to fight for his position. His position is simply understood. People do not test what they genuinely believe, will test them back. And when you have built yourself into something the world recognizes as having real teeth behind the calm exterior, you will notice a fundamental shift in how every single person around you begins to move in your presence. Comment, feared and respected if you're done being the man people take for granted. Drop it below and let the world know you've changed the standard. Number 7. The loneliness of the ascent. Nobody warns you about this part. Every conversation about power, about discipline, about the relentless pursuit of becoming something greater than what you were born into. It focuses on the strength, the strategy, the dominance, the arrival. What it never prepares you for is the silence that comes with the climb. The specific, hollow, disorienting silence of looking around one day and realizing that the version of you that is emerging, harder, sharper, more calculated, more intentional, does not fit comfortably into the spaces and relationships that the old version of you occupied. And that realization does not arrive gently. It arrives like a cold wind through an open window you didn't know was there. And it chills something deep inside you that no amount of Stoic philosophy fully prepares you for in the moment it hits. The ascent is lonely, not metaphorically, not poetically, literally lonely, because growth at this level is not a group activity. You cannot bring everyone with you, not because you are superior to the people you leave behind, but because elevation requires a ruthless honesty about your environment, and your environment includes the people inside it. Machiavelli was precise about this. He understood that the men closest to a prince were simultaneously his greatest asset and his greatest vulnerability. The wrong counsel, the wrong allegiances, the wrong emotional attachments to people whose vision does not match your trajectory. These are not just inconveniences. They are anchors, and an anchored man cannot rise no matter how powerful his engine, no matter how clear his destination, no matter how disciplined his daily execution of the work required to get there. There will be people in your life who genuinely love you and still cannot follow you into the version of yourself you are building. Not out of malice, but out of limitation. Their comfort zone ends where your growth begins, and the tension that creates is real, and it is painful, and it is absolutely non-negotiable. You will watch friendships dissolve not through argument or betrayal, but through the quiet, inevitable drift of two people moving in fundamentally different directions at fundamentally different speeds. You will find yourself in rooms full of people feeling more isolated than you ever did when you were actually alone, because there is no loneliness quite as sharp as the loneliness of being surrounded by people who cannot see what you see, cannot feel what you feel, and cannot understand why you are no longer satisfied with the ceiling they have made their peace with. But here is what you must understand about this loneliness, and you must understand it at the level of bone and marrow rather than just intellectual acknowledgement. It is not a sign that something is wrong with your path. It is the confirmation that something is right with it. Every man who ever built anything worth building passed through this corridor. Every man who ever refused to accept the life that was handed to him and chose instead to architect one worthy of his full potential walked this same stretch of road, quiet, uncertain, misunderstood, and utterly alone in the specific way that only people who are becoming something genuinely rare ever experience. The loneliness of the ascent is not a punishment, it is a filter. It separates the men who want power as a concept from the men who want it badly enough to pay the actual price that power demands. Pay it without complaint. Walk the corridor without flinching. Because on the other side of that loneliness is not just success. It is the arrival of your tribe. The people who find you after the transformation are not the people who knew you before it. They are different. They are rarer. They are operating at the frequency you have spent years tuning yourself to reach. And when they arrive, and they will arrive, the connection you build with them will be built on something unbreakable, because it will be built on the foundation of who you actually are, not who you were before you had the courage to become this. Comment: I walk alone. If you felt this loneliness and kept moving anyway, if you chose the ascent over the comfort, drop it below. I want to hear from the ones who are still climbing. Number 8, turning pain into precision. Every man who has ever been truly dangerous, not physically dangerous, not recklessly dangerous, but strategically dangerous, the kind of dangerous that makes powerful people pause before they move against you, was built in a specific kind of furnace. Not in comfort, not in ease, not in the careful, cushioned environment of a life where everything went according to plan and every person they trusted proved worthy of that trust. They were built in betrayal. They were built in failure so complete and so public that most men would have quietly dismantled themselves and accepted a smaller life rather than face the reconstruction. They were built in the specific agony of watching everything they worked for dissolve, watching people they loved weaponize that love, watching the world reveal its true face at the precise moment they were least equipped to absorb what they were seeing. And instead of breaking permanently, instead of allowing that pain to become their identity, their excuse, their lifelong story of why they never became what they were capable of becoming, they did something the world did not expect. They got precise. This is the transformation that separates the men who survive their pain from the men who are defined by it. Pain, in its rawest form, is just energy. It is one of the most potent and concentrated forms of energy a human being can experience. And like all energy, what determines its value is not its intensity, but its direction. The man who allows his pain to move outward becomes volatile, reactive, destructive. A man who burns everything around him, including the things worth keeping, who mistakes aggression for strength and vengeance for strategy, who spends his most powerful years in a fury that impresses no one and advances nothing. But the man who takes that same pain and turns it inward, who uses it as a diagnostic tool, a teacher, a relentless mirror that shows him every weakness that was exploited, every blind spot that was used against him, every misplaced trust and every moment of strategic negligence that left him exposed. That man is undergoing something alchemical. He is converting suffering into intelligence. Machiavelli did not write from a position of theoretical comfort. He wrote from exile. He wrote from the specific, grinding humiliation of a man who had operated at the highest levels of political power, who had advised princes and shaped policy and understood the mechanics of the world better than almost anyone alive, and who was then stripped of everything, imprisoned, tortured, and discarded by the very system he had served with complete dedication. And what did he do with that devastating, soul-crushing experience? He turned it into the most ruthlessly insightful manual on power ever written. He took every betrayal, every miscalculation, every moment of painful clarity about the true nature of loyalty and ambition and human self-interest, and he weaponized his understanding of it into something that has outlasted every single person who ever wronged him by 5 centuries and counting. That is the model. That is the standard. Not the man who was never hurt, because that man does not exist and has nothing of real value to teach you. The standard is the man who was hurt completely, who went to the floor, who stayed there long enough to understand exactly why he ended up there and precisely what it would take to ensure he never ended up there again. And then rose with a coldness, a clarity, and a calculated precision that made him exponentially more capable than he was before the fall. Your pain is not your setback. Properly directed, properly processed, properly converted, your pain is your most dangerous upgrade. Every scar is a lesson about where your armor was thin. Every betrayal is a masterclass in the specific vulnerabilities you can no longer afford to carry. Every failure is a detailed, personalized map of exactly what not to do next time. And next time, you will not do it. Stop mourning what broke you. Start studying it. Comment, pain into power if you've been through the fire and came out sharper. If your worst moments made you more dangerous, not less, drop it below. I want to know who's been forged. Number 9. The Code of the Untouchable Man. There is a category of man that exists in every era, in every culture, in every social and professional environment that human beings have ever constructed. And this man is immediately recognizable not by what he says or how he dresses or what he owns, but by something far more difficult to manufacture and far more impossible to fake. He is recognizable by the way a room adjusts when he enters it, by the way conversations shift, postures straighten, and calculations change the moment his presence registers. He is not the loudest man, he is rarely the most visibly aggressive. He does not need to announce his arrival or perform his confidence for an audience that needs convincing. He simply exists in a way that communicates something ancient and undeniable to every person in his vicinity, that this is a man who has built himself into something the world does not casually challenge. This is the untouchable man. And untouchability is not a gift. It is not a personality type. It is not something you are born with or stumble into accidentally. It is a code, a specific, deliberate, rigorously maintained code of principles that governs how he thinks, how he moves, how he responds, and most critically, how he refuses to respond to things that are beneath the standard he has set for his own life. The first principle of the code is absolute ownership. The untouchable man takes complete, unconditional responsibility for everything in his life, his circumstances, his results, his relationships, his failures, his position. Not because the world has always been fair to him, because it has not. Not because every bad thing that happened to him was his fault, because it wasn't. But because the moment you assign responsibility for your life to anything outside yourself, the economy, your upbringing, other people's behavior, systemic forces, bad luck, you simultaneously assign control of your life to those same external things. And a man who has handed control of his life to forces outside himself is not untouchable. He is completely exposed. Ownership is not about blame. It is about power. It is the declaration that regardless of what happened, you are the one who decides what happens next. The second principle is strategic patience. The untouchable man does not move impulsively. He does not react to every provocation, respond to every slight, or engage every battle that presents itself. Because he understands something that reactive men never grasp until they have lost too much proving it wrong. Not every battle is worth the energy it costs to win it. Some conflicts are designed specifically to drag you down to a level where your composure is your greatest casualty. Some provocations are not genuine attacks, they are tests, designed to measure whether you can be destabilized, whether you can be pulled out of your strategic position by something as simple and as cheap as another man's disrespect. The untouchable man sees the test for what it is and responds with the most devastating reply available to him: complete, unhurried, unbothered indifference. Because indifference from a powerful man is not weakness. It is the clearest possible signal that you are operating so far above the level of whatever is attempting to reach you that engaging with it would be beneath the dignity of your time. The third principle is irreplaceability. The untouchable man builds himself into something the world cannot easily substitute or discard. He does not compete on the same terms as everyone around him. He redefines the terms entirely. He develops capabilities so specific, a perspective so singular, a combination of skills and strategic intelligence so rare that removing him from any equation creates a problem that cannot be simply solved by finding someone else. This is not arrogance. This is the cold, practical understanding that value is the ultimate protection. The man the world needs cannot be casually eliminated by the world. Build yourself into a necessity, not a convenience. Make your presence an asset so substantial that the cost of losing it outweighs any temporary benefit of betraying it. The fourth and final principle of the code is emotional sovereignty. The untouchable man governs his inner world with the same iron discipline he applies to his external strategy. He feels everything: the rage, the grief, the desire, the doubt, but he has built an internal architecture so disciplined and so deliberately constructed that none of those feelings are permitted to make his decisions for him. He processes privately. He responds publicly only when the response serves his position. He never allows another person to become the landlord of his emotional state, because the man whose emotions are controlled by other people's behavior is a man who can be puppeted by anyone patient enough to learn his triggers. Emotional sovereignty is the foundation beneath every other principle. Without it, the entire code collapses, because a man who can be emotionally destabilized can always be strategically defeated, regardless of how much intelligence or preparation he brings to any situation. This is the code. Own everything. Move with patience. Become irreplaceable. Govern yourself completely. Live by these four principles without exception, without negotiation, and without the compromise that comfort will constantly tempt you toward. And you will build yourself into something this world does not know how to touch. Comment "I live by the code" if these four principles just changed something in the way you see yourself. If you're ready to operate by a different standard, drop it below. Let me see who's built for this. Number 10. The world will break you unless you become too dangerous to touch. This is where it ends, and this is where you begin. Everything covered in this journey: the awakening, the silence, the machine, the fear and respect, the loneliness, the pain, the code. It was never just philosophy. It was never just theory dressed in dark language to sound impressive. It was a blueprint, a precise, battle-tested, 500-year-old blueprint for the only version of you that this world cannot destroy. Because the world will break you. It breaks everyone who walks into it unguarded, unprepared, and operating under the illusion that goodness alone is sufficient armor against people who have decided that your vulnerability is their opportunity. But the man who has done the work, who has studied the game, mastered his silence, engineered his reputation, converted his pain into precision, and built himself around an unbreakable code of sovereign principles, that man does not get broken, he gets refined. The world tries him and discovers to its own quiet surprise that there is nothing left to exploit, nothing left to manipulate, nothing soft enough to penetrate. He has become exactly what Machiavelli spent his entire life trying to build: too dangerous to touch. Now go become that man. Comment "too dangerous to touch" right now. Say it like you mean it. Say it like it's already true. If this monologue changed something in you, if it lit something up that needed lighting, hit that like button, subscribe to Machiavellian Mind, and turn on notifications so you never miss a transmission. The men who find this channel are not here by accident. See you in the next one.